All right, good afternoon. So we're going to go ahead and get going. I'm recording the meeting, just so you know. You should be able to see my screen. And that was just for me, so I'll remember to record. We'll have some folks taking notes, and we'll make sure that those notes get out there for everybody to see after the meeting. We've had several other school counselors that aren't on our advisory council ask about access to the meeting, so I'll make sure that we send this out. Okay, so we've got a pretty big agenda this afternoon, which is why I wanted to get started right away. We will have our welcome by our interim commissioner here in just a moment. We'll do a roll call. We're going to have some different presentations from KDE staff that you see here. So CARES funding, we'll talk about summer learning, reentry in the fall, and then Miriam and I will speak about mental health issues. We'll finish up with just different resources for school counselors during the pandemic, and talk about potential next meetings, and then any kind of discussion or feedback that you want to offer, and then I'll offer you an exit slip to tell us how this went today, and give us feedback for future meetings. All right, so right now we've got Interim Commissioner Kevin C. Brown, who's with us, and he wants to bring you greetings.
Thank you, Dr. Sweeney. I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your day to participate in the advisory council. It's a very important process for us. I will be with you for the entire meeting, listening and taking notes. Just want you to know that we don't do this just to be doing it. We value the advice from our advisories, and the first advisory we conducted after the pandemic started, we had that with our students because we know that they were being directly impacted, and we've gotten so much great feedback from the various advisory groups. And counselors, you are the one of the most important pieces of the puzzle in your schools, and I know you are overworked and taxed with many more to-do items and responsibilities than you can possibly accomplish in a given day. Just know that that does not go unrecognized here, and particularly in a time of crisis that we're facing, and we're trying to do school remotely, and it is I know is particularly taxed your position and created a lot of stress and anxiety for you. But I just want to make sure you know how much we appreciate your efforts. And as you know, several years ago, we started placing a more needed emphasis on school counselors when Dr. Pruitt was here, and that has obviously continued since Dr. Pruitt left on through when Dr. Lewis was here, and then still continues today with the work of Dr. Sweeney. So again, I just want to thank you and for being here and all the work you do. And I will turn my camera off and we'll be listening. We have an hour, I think, allotted. Is that correct?
Or yes, but we'll most likely go a little bit over.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to go over. This is a hefty agenda. It's a great agenda. Every item is we need to spend some time on. So so if you're able to stay with us after the hour, we'd appreciate that, because I don't think we'll be able to get through everything. So Damien, Dr. Sweeney, I'll turn it back to you. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let's see here. Okay, so we're going to do a quick roll call. We have over 40 people, so I'll go through our list and make sure that I'll call on you. And if you wouldn't mind just unmuting your mic, turning on your camera, and then just letting us know where you're from, that would be awesome. We're going to try and do this part quickly, but we honestly want to honor your presence, your participation, and your voice. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so we'll start with Amy Riley.
You all hear me? There we go. Yep. Okay, I'm Amy Riley, and I'm representing the Kentucky School Counselor Association, and I am a counselor at Mercer Intermediate School in Harrodsburg, Kentucky.
All right, Amy's a great friend. Appreciate you being on. Ashley Hall.
Hi, I'm Ashley Hall. I'm a school counselor in Bourbon County at the middle school.
Awesome. Got some exciting stuff for middle school counselors coming up. I'm excited to share with you. Stacy Bassett. Stacy? Okay, we'll come back to Stacy. Brittany Banahan.
Hi, I'm Brittany. I am the other school counselor at Bourbon County Middle School with Ashley.
Awesome. Welcome. Elite Christie. She's one of our. Okay, we'll come back to Elise. Eve from Berea.
Hello, Eve Fontenez, Berea High School.
Awesome. Thank you. We've got Gina A on. Looks like you're calling from your phone. Okay. Gina Trout.
Hi, I'm Julie. I'm from Bowling Green, Kentucky. Bowling Green Independent School Systems, McNeil Elementary.
Awesome. Over 500,000 followers on her blog. Thanks for joining us. Dana Goins.
Hi, Damian. This is Dana Goins. I'm with JCPS at Mazik Middle School.
Yes. Thank you for, I think you hand wrote almost 400 cards to your students. So thank you for that. You're an awesome counselor. It's good to have you.
Thank you.
Heather Bushelman.
Hi, everybody. I'm Heather Bushelman, and I am in Boone County up in Northern Kentucky, and I am the counselor at Long Branch Elementary.
Awesome. Well, welcome, Heather. Jack Burnett.
Hi, Jack Burnett, Morningside Elementary, Elizabethtown Independent.
Yes. Right. Judd Light.
Oh, actually, this is Michelle. My son is Judd. I am a counselor at the Ignite Institute.
Yes, I got a chance to finally tour Ignite probably 2-3 months ago, and it is incredible.
Thank you. We're proud of it.
You should be. All right, Judy Rice.
Hello, I'm Judy Rice. I am a school counselor and the director of the Center for Educational Options for Henry County Public Schools.
Yes, great to have you.
Thank you.
Karen Swinney. And by the way, Karen, as you know, I love your last name.
Thank you. I love yours too. I'm Karen Sweeney. I'm a school counselor at Bowling Green High School down in Bowling Green, Kentucky.
Awesome. Thank you. Karen Coleman. Okay, we'll come back to Kathleen. Okay, Kayla Jones.
Hi, I'm Kayla Jones. I am counselor at Mayfield Elementary at the far western end of the state.
Okay, thank you for joining us. Lacey?
Hi, I'm Lacey Gross. I'm from Mapleton Elementary in Mount Sterling, Kentucky, representing Montgomery County Schools.
Awesome. Welcome, Lacey. All right. Mandy, it's good to have you. Mandy McLaren?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, thank you for letting me sit in and listen.
Yeah, it's good. It's great to have you. She's from the Courier Journal in Louisville. All right. Awesome. Michelle Searcy.
Hi, Michelle Searcy, lead counselor for Jefferson County Public Schools.
Awesome. Carol Morrison. Oh, actually, she's with us. Melissa Wainwright. Okay, Melissa's from OVEC, Ohio Valley Educational Cooperative. She helps lead the school counselors there.
Yes, hi, Davey.
Hey, good to have you. Cassandra Newsom.
Hey there, Cassandra Newsom, counselor at Marshall County High School in Benton, Kentucky.
Awesome. Sally Pierce.
Good afternoon, I'm Sally Pierce.
I am school counselor at Southern Elementary School in Pulaski County.
Yes, great to have you. Sarah Aiken.
Hi, I'm Sarah Aiken. I am the school counselor at Indian Hills Elementary School in Hopkinsville, and I am representing the Kentucky School Counselors Association as the president-elect.
All right, awesome. And last but not least, future Dr. Sharon Todd. Okay, Sharon is a counselor in Danville schools. She's getting her doctorate. She's close to finishing, or she's close to getting that chapter 3 done. She is going to she's going to be an awesome advocate for school counselors, and I'm really excited about the work that she does. All right, thank you for thank you all for joining us.
Can I jump
Yes.
in real quick? I just
ahead.
want to let you know I joined in. My name's Amy Beal, and
Oh,
I'm
hey.
a counselor in Northern Kentucky at Klein Elementary.
Yes, thank you, Amy. That's our SCOTA school counselor of the year. So thank you, Amy.
Hey,
Is there
Damien.
anybody else that I missed?
This is Kathleen.
Hey,
Gray.
Damien.
Yeah, yes, Kathleen.
I'm with Albany Elementary in Clinton County. I was just wondering if it's okay if I just sit in and listen
Yep.
today. I'm the school counselor there.
It's fine. And
Hey, Damien, can you hear me?
yes, go ahead.
Hey, this is Kyle Thomas, representing Kentucky School Counselor Association as the incoming president, and I'm also a school counselor at Oldham County Middle School.
All right, welcome. Is there anybody else?
Hey, Damien. I'm Megan Majors from Fayette County, teach at Tates Creek High School.
Awesome, welcome. I know you're a soccer coach. Played soccer with them at Transy. All right, thank you everybody for being here. Really appreciate your time today. So next we've got Robin Kinney. She's one of our associate commissioners. She's going to be speaking to us a little bit about CARES funding for COVID-19. The guiding question for her is what is your biggest concern as we work to distribute CARES Act money? So Robin.
Thank you, Damien. It's really nice to be with you all today. I think this is the first time I've had the opportunity to appear in front of the School Counselors Advisory Group. So thank you for welcoming me today. And it looks like we've got counselors from all over Kentucky. So that's wonderful to have all of you with us. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the CARES Act, which is the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. It's a federal act that was passed on March 27th. And for our purposes today, while it is a very broad, encompassing, comprehensive act that provides relief in many sectors across the United States, today we're going to focus really on funds that are coming from the CARES Act to the Commonwealth of Kentucky that will be able to assist and benefit your local school districts and your students. From the CARES Act, we're really going to focus on two pots of money. The first pot of money is the governor's emergency relief fund. And, you know, in education, we have to have acronyms for everything. So that is the GEARS money. And in the GEARS money, the Commonwealth is going to receive about $44 million from that amount. The governor has made decisions based upon that total pot of money to allocate $30 million of that to K-12 education. So about $30 million will be coming for distribution to our local school districts. We're very, very appreciative that the governor has made this decision to allow this amount of funding to come to our local school districts. From that pot of money, we'll talk a little bit about the permissible uses. And in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, although the guidance from the federal government really envisioned where we would distribute to those districts that were most significantly impacted by the coronavirus, Kentucky has taken the position that all of our districts have been impacted by the coronavirus. We all kind of stopped our in-person instruction at the same time. We're all dealing with the challenges of remote learning. And so we're taking the position that all should receive a portion of those funds. They will be distributed in accordance with the formula that we already have, which is the Title 1A formula. So that's how we're going to determine how much each school district receives. And the purposes of the funds are really two broad buckets. Districts may be able to use these funds to support remote learning and technology, or and they could choose to also use some of their funds to support the continuation of food services. We all know how important both of these components are going to be as we continue and try to adjust our instruction and also how we provide good, nutritious meals to our students. So in those two really broad categories, there's lots of flexibility about how a district might choose to use those funds, but they have to be tied to one of these large buckets. We are very appreciative that we applied for the fundings from USED to receive the GEARS money. They had a very quick turnaround for us, so we've already been approved for the funding. And we announced at the superintendent's webcast yesterday that assurances for districts to sign will be available in GMAP, which is our grants management system here. They'll be available on GMAP on Friday, and we'll get that money starting flowing to our school district. So we already have that. And the other thing that we did, we distributed to your superintendents and local school districts yesterday, sort of the guidance from KDE. Districts do have that broad flexibility, but sometimes it helps to have a little bit of thought from even a broader perspective. So we've taken information from across the Department of Education on how that might be used and to give you a little guidance. And you may have other good ideas that would still fit with under those umbrellas, and you're encouraged to be very flexible in your thinking. So really happy to report that GEARS money will be coming very soon. The other pot of money is the elementary and secondary school funding. And that's a larger pot of money. It's $194 million that will be coming to the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And we have already applied and received approval for those funds as well. We have not released our guidance yet. That's to come and later this week or early of the next week. But to share with you a little bit about how the ESSER, and that's our shorthand for Elementary and Secondary Fund, ESSER can be utilized. It again is very, very broad. School districts will receive about 83%. Again, it's under the Title I allocation formula. So that determines how much money your school district will receive, about 83% of what you might have received previously in Title I. But it has very broad uses. It's broader than the GEARS money that can be used. Under the elementary and secondary fund, you can actually use it for anything that you currently use ESSER, SF funds for IDEA funds for, Perkins, McKinney-Vento. It is very, very broad. So in addition to your regular allocations that you will receive under those federal programs for the next year, this will be funds that you will receive on top of those regular appropriations. Additionally, as we know, we've had lots of additional challenges, additional things that we have to pay for as we deal with the coronavirus pandemic. So anything relating to sanitation and cleanliness, PPE, personal protective equipment that your district may have to provide, that can be used for this. And I think for counselors specifically, I'll just specifically note you can use it for social and emotional well-being help, mental health supports. So those things that you as a counselor are charged with kind of coordinating and making sure are delivered to our students, this funding can take care of that as well. Districts will have to make some decisions, of course. Anytime there is funding available, it never seems that we have enough to do everything we want to do. But I would share with you and encourage you to talk with your superintendent and your local central office staff, your principal, about ways that the CARES Act funding could help support the critical mission that school counselors perform. Districts will be able to make those decisions, again, staying with kind of within the broad parameters of what the CARES Act requires. And so there will be lots of opportunity for discussion at your local level of where you might see the needs and the gaps in your work and how it might benefit your students. That is a very, very quick overview of the CARES Act. I know in the interest of time, you all have lots of things on your agenda, but we could perhaps take a couple of questions or focus on our guiding question again, which is, what is your biggest concern as we work to distribute the CARES Act money?
Thank you, Robin. So if you have a question, follow-up question, or a concern, please go ahead and ask that openly.
I have a quick question, and this may have been answered. This is Amy Riley. This may have been answered earlier, so forgive me, but could this money be used for actually adding counselors to school districts that are struggling to find the money to meet the mandate of SB 1?
Amy, that's a good question. Generally speaking, let me share with you, federal funding only lasts for a specific period of time. So we really don't encourage you adding additional long-term staff to support Senate Bill 1 efforts. I guess what I can share with you that Senate Bill 1, of course, in the last legislative session, the General Assembly did appropriate some funds for school counselors. I think it was a little more than $7 million that will be coming to local school districts. So I think we would encourage you to pursue or look at that as your option for hiring new staff. If you needed some temporary supports to help you with a specific project related to the coronavirus, you could pay for a short-term type situation for someone that could help you in the counseling or mental health, social, emotional well-being areas. So if you needed something more short-term, CARES Act could be used for that. For a more long-term permanent position, like you're asking about for Senate Bill 1, I would encourage you to look at the funding that will be made available. And that's actually not in the department's budget. It's part of this Kentucky Center for School Safety. So I'd be watching for information coming from the Center for School Safety on the dollars associated with that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, it looks like, Damien, I don't see any other questions. In the interest of time, we'll let you head on to your next presenter. I will hang on the line, though, if other questions come up.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for your time today, Robin. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Next, we have Dr. Amanda Ellis. She's going to talk to us a little bit about summer learning. Our guiding question: what are the biggest barriers preventing the provision of meaningful summer learning for students?
All right. Excuse me. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for letting me be with you today. As Commissioner Brown mentioned before, we are really relying on the feedback from our advisories just to help us think through things that we probably have not considered as we're going at a very fast pace to provide support to districts. So today our focus, or my focus that I'd like to share with you and then get your feedback, as you can see the guiding question on the screen: what are the biggest barriers preventing the provision of meaningful summer learning for students? So we know that there is great fatigue across the state. We know students and families are exhausted. We know that the staff is. This has been a tough, trying spring to do the best we can with what we've got. While not perfect, Kentucky was in a really good position compared to many other states. But now we're starting to transition into summer. And I know that you as counselors are always very concerned about the well-being of your students when they're not with you. And so to prolong that is unsettling, and rightfully so. So what we've done for the summer learning support, what we're working on right now, is that we're working on supports that kind of are more of an audience for families, for younger students especially, more so than schools. We know that schools are struggling to figure out how to provide summer intervention, especially those who may not have connectivity or equipment to continue their academic improvement, especially those who need it most. I know that many of your schools are developing plans for communication, for reaching out and keeping in touch with your students throughout the summer just to ensure their well-being. And so what we are doing is we launched a web page on Monday, and I'll link the page in the chat box when I'm finished. That is for summer support. And part of what we have involved with that summer support is we have the summer read up program that we did last year. That's in partnership with our summer feeding program to hand out the importance of reading to your children every day, or talking with your kids for language development. 19 of our districts before the pandemic hit had applied to be a part of it, and they will be handing out free books. Many of your schools already do that anyway. And we also are promoting some really simple basic math games just to keep young children engaged in literacy and numeracy. But it's not an academia approach. It's a very family friendly approach. And in partnership with the Children's Literacy Foundation, they have excellent resources that are very family friendly. We have posted that online for anyone to use. They can send in the lunch bags for when the kids come to get their summer lunch, or whatever means you have to communicating with your kids. We also had James Allen, who is our library media specialist coordinator, has given us local library resources. So we know that many of your libraries in your communities, especially if your community is rural, rely heavily on the public libraries. And you know, many of your families go to the library for air conditioning on a hot day. Many of them used to collect their lunch, their summer feeding lunch from the library. Many use it for Wi-Fi, retrieving books, so on and so forth. And so we know that the libraries are closed right now, and what resources are offered that could be of assistance to families. Now, according to the Education Cabinet, they are working on a plan with the public libraries to open. I just don't have a timeline for that. So we do have resources online for that. KET, as you know, has been an excellent partner of providing instructional shows and things, and they've changed up their daily routine to be supportive of NTI. So many families that may not have connectivity, they may have just basic television, even through an antenna, they can access KET. So they will be continuing their summer services of in the morning having children's shows for younger children, and then they actually will be having some remedial reading and mathematics courses for middle and high school students, and that will be pushed out. So either schools may use that, or encouraging families just to keep their older ones engaged.
Amanda, if I can jump in real quick.
Of course.
KT is also providing professional development on mental health to our educators throughout the state. We just the presentation that Miriam and I are going to do at the end of this meeting today. We recorded this for KET last week, so we're really excited about that also.
Yes, thank you, Damien, so much. That's exactly what I was going to share, that there's been a great partnership. I think it's called You're Not Alone. Is that right, Damien?
That's correct.
That's what I thought. Okay, so yeah, so you'll hear more about that from Damien and Miriam. I think they're excellent resources. If you have not already looked at the resources that Damien has published on the COVID-19 page, which is, I believe, online counseling, they're excellent resources. Many of you have taken advantage of them. I know that the usage is really high. One of the suggestions we received from the student advisory on our summer support page was to add transitional resources for kids, especially those who are going to college. And I thought that was a great piece of input. They said, you know, we're still nervous about leaving our high school and going to college. Like we would like just reminders and things to help us prepare as we go to, whether it's college or a trade school or into the workforce. We are nervous about that. So that's something that I've talked to Damien about. I know he has excellent resources and have been working on different transition approaches. And so I'll pause there. That's kind of where we're starting. We do have guest readers that are reading books online that anyone can access. We do have permission through our publisher, so it was checked with copyright, that families can just click on it, or districts can play it while kids are driving walking up to get their lunches, so it's accessible just for literature to be shared. So that's a start on what we have. We're going to be adding more to it as resources become available to meet just-in-time needs. So I'll pause there and go back to the guiding question. And what are additional barriers that do you see, or suggestions you would have that we know are preventing the provision of meaningful summer learning, and understanding that their well-being, their mental well-being of just taking a break and breathing is also recognized. So it's not just driving home the academics, but how do we keep families engaged and kids engaged who've been away from their routines and away from maybe their safe environment, and engaging them throughout the summer and extended summer. So I'll pause there, and Damien, I'll turn it to you to facilitate any questions. I'll be happy to answer any.
All right. So guys, just so you know, Dr. Ellis is the person that brought me into KDE. She's a huge advocate of school counselors. Anytime we have a counselor connection that goes out, or anytime I'm preparing for a big presentation at one of your co-ops or one of your districts, I always go to her to get everything vetted. And she is just a wealth of knowledge. And like I said before, she's a huge advocate of school counselors. So this is the time to ask questions or voice any concerns that you might have. She's going to present next as well. So any questions, concerns right now?
Damien, this is Sally Pierce.
Hi, Sally.
I am very concerned about our ESL students. I mean, I have heard from several families, they do not have the internet access, and they don't have transportation to even go to some of the places. And so I'd love to know what some other districts are doing to help their English as second language populations.
That is an excellent question. I am so glad you brought that up. We have talked about some of our different student populations, but to acquire specific strategies, I think that's a great idea, and something that we need to acquire. Is, you may know, some folks on a typical summer, this is so far from typical, but a typical summer, many have buses or cars that deliver the summer feeding lunches to apartment complexes or neighborhoods that are pretty far out of town, to your point, because they do not have transportation at least up to twice a week. And so I think that's a really good question, and I will definitely have some follow-up, and we can add that to the summer learning, summer support on that webpage, and we'll keep Damien in touch so he can notify you all as well. But I think that's an excellent point, because that is going to be a statewide issue. And we know that we have increased, and Robin and Kevin can definitely speak to this, increase our summer feeding. We have a huge participation rate right now, which is a good thing. And so really thinking through how to reach those families who may not have access or even transportation, I think, is an excellent point. And I have made note of that to definitely dig into some of those resources. So thank you very much.
Yeah, Sally, I've actually got a meeting with our EL team at KDE next week, and so I'll bring that up with them as well. I appreciate you, Sally.
Yep, absolutely.
What other concerns, questions do you have on summer learning?
Damien, this is Sarah Aiken. Just a kind of a comment and kind of a concern that I have. You know, a lot of our students participate in some of our local summer camps, like with the Boys and Girls Clubs, our local YMCA, and they provide a lot of meaningful, summer learning activities, for our students. I'm on our local board of directors at the YMCA, and I try to go in during the summers and provide some, social and emotional learning activities for those students to keep them engaged in that. And that's just not something that at this point we're going to be able to do. So I'm definitely concerned, because they have lost that connection with a lot of those other organizations. And so that's just a kind of a concern that I have as well.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay. Any other questions, concerns? Hello?
Damien, are you able to hear me now?
Okay. Now I am.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. My computer just stopped with all sound.
Just really quick, Damien, to your point, and if you said this, I apologize, but to the last point around the summer camps and the supports, I think that's an excellent point about the consistency and what is offered throughout the summer. I know there's been a lot of question around childcare, but it's bigger than just childcare. It's really that consistent support and engagement with our school-age children. And so I know that is a point of discussion and what would be appropriate, but you're right, there will be a lack of that considering what it used to be. So I've made note of that as well. I appreciate it. Sorry to interrupt you, Damien.
Oh, no, you're good. Thanks. Thought I lost everybody for a second there. Got really nervous. Okay. We're going to go ahead and we'll have you speak about returning to school, Dr. Ellis, with the guiding question, what are your biggest concerns about reentry in the fall?
Yeah, and I think we have others joining us maybe as well as Kay and others. So I can
Yes.
start it on, okay, great. I'll start it on an academic side and then I'll turn it over to my colleagues to really pick up on the logistical pieces. So when we were talking about reentry, it is multifaceted and not easy. And so I have excellent colleagues who have pulled together some pretty amazing guidance from across our agency to provide to districts with the goal of it being released, at least the first phase on Friday. And Kay Kennedy can speak to that. But our focus was around how do we reenter logistically? Well, how do we do it safely? How do we take into consideration the mental and mental well-being of our students, our staff, and our families? All of those matter and absolutely have an implication on how you reenter school and what that may look like and the supports that are necessary for all involved. And then we are also looking at the academic side of how do we approach this year a little bit different. And so I'll just tell you briefly for the Office of Teaching and Learning on the academic side, we are completing our third week starting right after this webcast today with considerations for how teachers can walk through their curriculum, identify what was taught during the COVID period, how to address gaps, and not just place kids all in intervention, because every child will walk in with some kind of deficiency or need, regardless if they had a safe home or they didn't. And that's just the academic part. That's not even their well-being. And so we are pulling this information together. I know Damien has excellent resources for the social emotional needs of our students and our staff and considerations and how to approach it, which I so greatly appreciate. And Kay will be able to share the logistics of how things will be approached. But I will let my other colleagues speak and then definitely be here for the questions. But I want you all to know this is very multifaceted, and I am absolutely positive you all have already started to think about this. But hopefully our guidance will give you additional questions and risk to consider as you plan for multiple approaches to how we will re-enter school. So I will pause there and turn it over to my colleagues so you kind of have a more robust approach or view of how we're approaching this.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Ellis. Kay Kennedy?
Yes, this is Kay Kennedy, and I'm with the Office of Finance and Operations. We were given the challenge, I guess is the best way to describe it, of putting together some guidance to help school districts. And I don't know how it's felt to you all, but really is a situation of we're gonna build this airplane as we fly it. Things are just happening at a breakneck speed, and what you know today may or may not be valid tomorrow. So what we've tried to do is put together a framework that can help guide districts in the planning process for opening school next year. And Governor Beshear has asked us to look at the opening of school basically from sort of a timing perspective, that is an early entry, perhaps at the 1st of August, maybe even the end of July, a traditional entry, which would be normally for most of you in the third week of August, give or take a few days either way, or the third alternative would be a late opening, that we delay the start of school until October. And all of this would be based on what the best knowledge is about the direction of the pandemic at that time. Would it make sense to get started early, knowing that we might have a closure later in the fall, or would it be better to start later, maybe as late as October, thinking that there would be a spike in the late summer timeframe that would necessitate that delay? So we're looking at providing guidance around those options. And then within each of those options, districts have to look at not only the academic side of things, but logistically, how are we going to get children to school? How are we going to feed them? How are we going to actually teach them if they're on site? And how are we going to make sure that that's done in a safe environment? So as you know, if you've watched the governor's press conferences in the afternoon, he has had healthy at home and now healthy at work guidelines around social distancing, the necessary PPE, cleaning and disinfecting the work environment. So all of these factors have to be considered as we look at the opening of school in this fall. So a main priority is how do we ensure the health and safety for all, and all means students and staff. So we've included in our guidance some guiding questions and the risk factors that may be associated with those guiding questions. Outside of the realm of health and safety for all, we're also looking at school and district operations around providing transportation, providing a safe, clean environment in each facility, and being able to feed students on some sort of regular basis, continuing the effort that we are actually utilizing now. So overarching is the need for the district to establish, as the governor puts it, a healthy at work officer, a person in the district who is going to help ensure that all facets of the operation, from teaching and learning to all of the support services, gets done in a timely manner, and that we have organization around how the start of school is going to happen. We also recommend that the district establish a communications team, because sharing information and transparency is the best way to get folks on board with what you're trying to do. Education and training around how we maintain that safe environment is going to be critical. So there's just a whole myriad of activities and strategies that have to be created and managed so that we can make sure that we get school started in a safe environment. The document that we are going to be distributing later on this week, hopefully, is intended to be a living, breathing document, because what we know today definitely will be enhanced in the next few weeks, and some of what we know today may no longer apply in a couple of weeks. So it is our intention to update the document frequently based on what we know at the time, based on the best information that we can get from our partners at the Department for Public Health, as well as our partners across the school community in Kentucky. I think that's about all I want to cover today, Damien, and I'll be available for questions.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. One of my coworkers just joined me, so I apologize if I have some interruptions. He's 3. Are there any questions or concerns for Kay Kennedy?
Hi, this is Sharon. Sorry about my mic earlier. I downloaded the app and I think I have a better experience now. And I realize when we go back, it will be an all hands on deck situation. But I really hope that we can work with KDE and maybe KASA to ensure that our school counselors are in fact available for psychological safety. Of course, physical safety is a huge concern, but I'm really concerned that as of right now, school counselors aren't available in the way that they need to be anyway when school is in session. So I really hope that these needs are communicated to our administrators so that they can free up school counselors in a way that they can be most effective to the students in Kentucky.
Future Dr. Todd, I think that's a great point. I'm on an education continuation task force with many of the superintendents, and any chance I get, I'm talking about how our school counselors need to address the social and emotional well-being of our students and staff. So, so hopefully they're getting that message. We'll continue to send it. Thank you. Okay, next we have Bill Buchanan. He is our early learning liaison, and Sylvia Starkey, who is our director for the Division of IDEA Monitoring and Results. The guiding question is, what are your biggest concerns about reentry in the fall?
Hi, this is Sylvia Starkey, and I'm the director of the Division of IDEA Monitoring and Results. We wanted to talk to you a little bit about some of the questions I think that people have had regarding reentry into school with special education. And then Bill will talk a little bit later about reentry in terms of preschool and the things that we're looking at. Some of the biggest questions that we're asking, and the standard question we're asking people to ask themselves, or to think about equity and access for students with disabilities. So before we make any decisions or say that they're not able to do it, the questions were they provided equity? Were they able to access it? Did they have the ability to access the internet? Do they have internet access? Those kinds of things. And another thing that we keep talking about is looking into the past to help us to prepare for the future. There's a lot of confusion that's happening right now between the differences between extended school year services, which we commonly call ESY, and compensatory education. I know everybody's really nervous about compensatory education, but we're seeing some confusion between the two things. We're actually in the development process for guidance to help build a piece that could help to prepare ARC chairs for what do they need to be thinking about when they're talking about compensatory education in terms of reentry in the fall. It should help to delineate the differences between ESY and compensatory education, and we're hoping that it will also help you to know how to document those services once that time comes. So you can be on the lookout for that. We anticipate it will be coming out. We're also, just as a reminder, the standard for comp ed for compensatory education is missed services. So ESY does not necessarily apply right now. The standard for ESY is actually regression of taught skills without recoupment. So ESY does not necessarily apply in terms of what happens when we miss a service. So if we miss a service, let's say the student was unable to come to class because I had a district call me and the student lived in a nursing home and there was a nobody in, nobody out policy and the kid didn't have access to the internet. And so there was no way to give him services. So in that case, compensatory education is what applies. So just keep your eyes peeled open for that guidance once it comes out. There's also a lot of conversations happening around maintenance of effort. Maintenance of effort is pretty complicated, but in its most simple form, it's making sure that your district expends the same amount of local funds each year on special education as it did the year before. It really applies more to like central office staff and your director of special education. But to give you kind of a background in terms of what's happening, CARES and GEARS funding, GEARS funding and all of those things, we are encouraging districts to reserve a portion of that money for compensatory education, but there's a little bit of a catch-22 on whether to spend or not spend local funds on compensatory education. There are maintenance of effort issues no matter which way that you decide it, and so we've been encouraging districts to contact staff in the Office of Special Education and Early Learning to help them navigate the maintenance of effort requirements. We actually have some people that's their full job is dealing with maintenance of effort. And so it's really helpful for them to be able to help kind of work districts through that on a case-by-case basis. Another thing we're really encouraging districts is to think about contingency planning for the future. So how can we use what we've learned during this section of the pandemic to help prevent any kind of future confusion on how we're going to provide that service? And it also, if we can think about contingency planning, it also could prevent the need for future compensatory education. So what did we learn about students? Did we learn that this student doesn't have access to the internet? And so when I'm building his contingency plan, it needs to all be paper-based. Are there students that, we're less likely to, what do you need to think about in terms of if we were to have a resurgence, how could we plan for that in advance moving into the next school year? We've also been doing weekly webinars with the special education cooperatives and the early childhood regional training centers. They've been really successful. The last one was last weekend on Friday. And so we actually have plans to continue those, probably not on an every week basis as they've been previously, but we're actually, we've talked about moving those forward. They've been very successful. Districts seem to like them. And we've been able to address concerns about progress monitoring and how to develop, how to implement specially designed instruction very on a as needed basis and very timely. And so we've had really good feedback about those and we intend to continue them. I'm actually going to throw it to Bill really quick and let Bill talk to you a little about our preschool, and then we'll stop to see if you guys have any questions or concerns that you want us to be thinking about while we're discussing reentry for special education and other special populations.
Thank you, Sylvia. Hi, everyone. I'm Bill Buchanan, and our office is also providing guidance and support for reentering preschool students in the fall, helping districts think through these issues, planning to meet the needs of our state-funded preschool students. And as you know, early childhood is the foundation for school success. Early childhood is the time for developing skill sets and mindsets necessary for healthy development. The state-funded preschool program is designed for 3- and 4-year-olds with disabilities, as well as 4-year-olds who are income eligible. And based on the economic impact of COVID-19, we should anticipate a potential increase in the number of income eligible children. Part of our guidance is for districts to consider using their COVID or the CARES Act funding to support reentering preschool students in the fall, and using some of these funds for professional development for preschool teachers, I think would be a good use of those funds as well. So give that consideration. And partnerships will be needed at this time to ensure that all eligible children have access to high quality services. Partnerships with Head Start, with childcare, and again, the use of the CARES Act funding could help tremendously with developing and strengthening these partnerships. KDE, as Sylvia mentioned, is providing support to special education directors and preschool coordinators with weekly webinars, and these are found on our COVID-19 page. The topics for early childhood include social emotional learning and the importance of routines, the importance of purposeful play, early literacy activities, as well as the importance of outdoors, getting outside, learning outside. So I want to express gratitude and appreciation for the work that you do, for ensuring the social emotional wellness of our students, including our youngest learners. So with that, I'll pause for any questions that you may have for Sylvia and for me.
Questions, concerns for our special education students returning to school? Okay, Bill, Sylvia, appreciate your time very much. Really appreciate it. Yep, absolutely. Okay, before we go to the next item topic, the next theme, I did get a concern come in through text message, which was, just concerns about kids that really we haven't been able to get a hold of or communicate with since the beginning of the pandemic. So I'll throw that to school counselors. How are you handling that? For the sake of time, if you wouldn't mind just putting that in the chat box, how are you handling students that maybe you have not been able to get a hold of, or families that you have not been able to get a hold of when you do your check-ins with students? So go ahead and put that in the chat box, please. Judy, I appreciate that. So Judy makes home visits. I am hearing of a lot of school counselors doing home visits. Many of you are able to do that with a partner, which is nice and safe. Let's see what else we have. Okay, so yeah, so home visit seems to be the biggest thing. Okay. Okay, so if you guys you're taking your resource off your SRO with you and your Frisky with you. That's great.
Yes, we do that.
That's awesome. Email remind. Okay. Okay. All right. Awesome. Okay. Michelle, counselors are using a variety of options to try to reach students, some getting creative and reaching out to their friends. Yes, remember having to do that often. Kids love our SRO officers. That's really important. Yes. Okay, so some people have an administrator with them, with their school counselor. That's great. Message the parents through any means, class dojo, text messages, email, phone. Okay, I know we also have some different counselors that have drop-in time, so maybe you'll open a time up from 10 to 12 and say, you know, if you are available, just drop in. So that's good. Sally, bus drivers delivering food, been great to help. Okay, I'm also hearing that many counselors are doing like PLCs. You're still doing PLC meetings with maybe a team of teachers that you're in charge of. If you have an academy, or like I said, if you're in charge of a team, then you're meeting with those teachers and asking them about, you know, who's checking in to classes, who's not turning in assignments, how are you handling that? Have you heard from these people? What are you doing to kind of help, you know, connect with them? And then if there are further concerns, that's when the school counselor really gets involved. We're also hearing about child welfare checks, so potentially even sending local police to check just to make sure that families are okay, is another way that I've heard of different counselors, you know, ensuring the safety of our kiddos. Robin, yes, I agree with you. Shout out to those great bus drivers. Okay, actually texting parents, cool. Class meetings online, they've been very successful and well attended. Great, Eve. Yeah, and that's one thing that we really recommend right now is that counselors, you know, because of some of the things that future Dr. Sharon Todd mentioned earlier, with how consumed you are with so many different roles in the school, you guys aren't often able to get those school counseling curriculum lessons in. So we're really encouraging you to create videos, do flipped classrooms, do those school counseling curriculum lessons, and get that information out to parents and your students as well. Yes, I agree with you, Michelle. I'm continually concerned about them. Yeah. Okay, we're going to go ahead and proceed. So Miriam and I, and hopefully you know Miriam, I'll let her introduce herself, but she's been a great partner on this project. We're going to talk to you about behavioral health for staff and students during the pandemic, and then again, considerations for distance learning and reentry. As Dr. Ellis mentioned earlier, we have put together a guidance document that we're really excited about. We think it's going to be very powerful and quite simple to use, but it does take in kind of the psychological factors that we need to address when thinking about student and staff reentry. So really excited about that. I don't want to fail to mention that we were blessed to also have as a partner Dr. Judy Vanderhaar. She worked on that guidance document in this presentation with us, so big shout out to her. So Miriam, will you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Miriam Silman. I'm the Trauma-Informed Care Program Administrator at the Department for Behavioral Health, Developmental, and Intellectual Disabilities. And some of you I probably know from my many years at the Center on Trauma and Children. And also spend a good portion of my time, actually half of my time, with KDE, working on Project Aware and other programs that address primarily mental health and psychological well-being for students as well. So happy to be here and think that school counselors are the linchpin for making schools run the way they should and making sure kids are able to learn. So appreciate everything that you all do. You're on mute, Damien.
Thanks. I appreciate it. On a scale of 1 to 10, please rate your happiness in the chat box right now. Where are you today at this moment in this space? Go ahead and put that in the chat box, please.
And also, we're not seeing the slides yet.
Ah, really? Okay.
So while Damien's doing that, I'm seeing everything from 6 to an 8.4, 9, 7s, 8s, some more 6s. Okay, they're up now, Damien.
Awesome. Thank you. Ooh, Eve, 9.4. Interesting. Okay. All right. So the next step is, as Miriam said, we're seeing a lot of 6s. We're seeing some 8s, 7s. What is it going to take for you to move 2 numbers up? Go ahead and put that in the chat box. It can just be a simple term, simple word, simple phrase. But what do you need to do in your life at this, maybe not at this very moment, but later today, tomorrow, this weekend, to improve that happiness rating? What's one thing that you can do to improve that for yourself? Go ahead and put that in the chat box. Amy, the sun just started shining. We had a little bit of sunshine yesterday. We're able to get out. One of our boys just learned to ride his bike during this time. It's been really fun. He actually also learned how to ride a motorcycle, if you can believe it. All right, at least get out of the house for sure. I'm talking about personally. So Eve, personally, what do you need to do? Okay, Dana, for sure. Some of the, we can definitely be overwhelmed by virtual meetings and too much screen time. Absolutely. Gina, you need a hug. I think we all do. Yes, personal grace. That is something I've been thinking about a lot during this time. Is how do we be easy with ourselves, especially with the hardships of trying to balance. Many of you are trying to balance, being an excellent school counselor, also being an excellent parent, grandparent, etc. Colleague. So you're trying to balance a lot. While also trying to do your job. Many of you are also trying to be NTI teachers as well. Okay, all right, well, thank you. So as counselors, we have to lead the charge, right? We have to lead the charge in terms of teaching others the importance of self-care, and we've got to do that because of the busyness and the kind of chaotic nature of our roles. We've got to make sure that we're practicing self-care ourselves. One thing that I know about you is that you are willing to give everything that you have to everybody else, but we aren't so good as counselors at really taking time for ourselves and doing those things for ourselves. So this is just a quick reminder that that's needed and necessary during this time. Okay, so there are a lot of sources of stress during this time. One of them is just anxiety about exposure and illness. What Miriam or myself might have considered a simple cough 3 months ago, we might now be really concerned that we've attained this virus, right? So there's a lot of anxiety about exposure and illness right now. Of course, we just saw in the chat box, limited connections to others, limited support system is also a stressor. For many of our students, lack of cognitive stimulation and monotony is also stressful. Limited access to normal coping strategies. My thing in school was always playing a team sport. Not being able to do that would have been stressful for me. And as you know, many of our kids participate in so many different clubs, sports, the arts, and not being able to have that accessible is really hard for them. Family members being stressed, limited resources and financial stress, losses and grief, whether or not it's in reference to COVID-19, and then just the uncertainty of these times is also very stressful. Signs of stress in your students. So clingy, whiny, tearful, frightened, and anxious. I've told you many times about our counselor corner in the cafeteria that we had at Seneca High School. And even then, without the pandemic and without kind of these times of uncertainty, we would have kids that would sit with us every single day because they wanted to know that they were safe and that they had adults that were looking after them and cared for them. So we can anticipate that that's going to happen more. Students can be agitated, hyperactive, and overreactive. They can also be irritable, impatient, aggressive, and angry. They may show signs of withdrawing, disengaged, lethargic, depressed, sad, hopeless, and suicidal. With the student advisory councils that Dr. Ellis mentioned earlier for the commissioner, we would have students that would often talk about how friends of theirs were already withdrawing from their friend groups. They were already experiencing depression or sadness. And even, I always thought it was funny, but we would even have kids that would be, they would get on their video and they'd be laying in bed because their bodies just needed that rest. So we're already seeing these signs of stress. Kids might have poor concentration, limited comprehension, and poor memory. They may have those vague physical complaints, so those somatic issues. My stomach hurts. It just keeps bothering me. I have this headache that won't go away. We're already hearing examples of students that say that they're not sleeping well and that they're not eating well. And then we might also have students that seek attention and even get in your face. So in the chat box, please put this. What signs of stress are you seeing in your students as you check in with them, and how are you handling this? Go ahead and put that in the chat box, please. Judy, by the way, I just saw your chat about personally sunny day at the lake. I do expect an invitation. Let's see. Okay, so Gina Crabtree, you're seeing students disconnecting from Google Meets and being super quiet. Megan, disengagement. Reduced interest in connecting with others, yes. Actually seeing a lot of my parents express their stress around their kids during meets. Okay. Sorry, one of my colleagues just jumped in again. All right, great. We also are going to see signs of stress in staff. So our staff may be anxious and fearful, depressed and sad. One of the big things that we look forward to every single year at Seneca was the last day of school. We would rally in the lobby after that last bell, and we would just cheer kids out. We would have them kind of walk through us. We'd be giving them hugs and high fives, and losing that opportunity is really, really sad and hard for staff members. Staff members may also withdraw. They may be less engaged or absent. They may feel irritable, impatient, frustrated, angry, explosive, or even overreactive. We've already seen signs of folks feeling agitated, poor concentration and poor memory. They may feel overwhelmed, confused, or have difficulty with problem solving or making decisions, and they may also lose that creativity or lack of motivation. Okay. Go ahead, and while Miriam talks to us a little bit about resilience, will you please tell us what signs of stress you're seeing in your staff? Again, this will help us as we provide further guidance from KDE. So what signs of stress are you seeing in your staff, and then how are you handling this? I have seen, I'm so proud of the counselors in our state. I've seen so many of them that are telling me that they're literally handwriting cards, just like Dana did with her students, with almost 400 students. They're doing that for their staff as well, just to remind. Okay, bud, I love you. Just to remind their staff that that they're thinking about them, that they're important, and that they matter. So, how are you handling signs of stress with your staff? Please put that in the chat box. Okay, Miriam, I'm going to let you take over now.
Sure. And I just wanted to say that I think that one of the reasons that it's important to think about all of these signs for both the kids and the staff is because you all may make the assumption when you see some of these things that you connect it to psychosocial stress, and some of your colleagues may not, but also they may not even recognize it in themselves. And so being able to help them see how these things all interact is going to be really important. We know, and the other thing I wanted to say is that we know that school counselors become the default go-to people even for the staff in the school when they're feeling stressed. So we know you get it from both angles. Some folks are going to be at greater risk for an even greater stress response. So people who have had significant losses in their life or a recent loss, folks who have had a history of trauma or who are experiencing trauma now, or have other traumas that are happening during this time. If there's any pre-existing behavioral health concerns, anxiety, depression, obsessive compulsive disorder, disruptive disorder, ADD, ADHD, those kinds of things, that can mean that there's less ability to cope and the baseline is starting in a different place. Obviously, folks who have limited support systems, whether those are within the family, within the community, within the workplace, are at risk for a stronger stress response. And then folks who have any concerns around relationships, attachment, feel isolated from others even prior to the pandemic will feel it all the more strongly now. And then, of course, if folks don't have strong coping skills to start with, then under stress, it's even harder to figure those things out and make them manage. So when you think about your kids, the kids who are probably going to be at greater risk, as well as your colleagues, are folks who are already on your radar screen in some way, but really being prepared. So we came up with this ABC framework for what are things that schools can do: awareness, building resilience, and creating a crisis plan. So we can go on to the next one. For awareness, what we want to think about is the idea of look, listen, and link. And so this comes from the psychological first aid world. These are things that you are trained to do already. In some ways, you're going to have some superpowers to be paying attention, but also, I think, really model this for your colleagues and help them to become better at looking and listening and then making the connection to you so that you can help with the linkage. When we're looking, we're obviously looking at practical needs, food, clothing, shelter, etc., but really looking at those psychosocial needs, and then also at academic or professional supports that may be needed. But I think that you all really are going to be the linchpin, as I said, of paying attention to those psychosocial needs and making sure that they don't get overlooked. When we think about listening, we want to be listening to students, we want to be listening to their families, we want to be listening to staff, and also folks in the community who may have concerns or may be really important sources of information for folks who are struggling, who need something extra, or for some resources as well. And obviously, when we're linking, we're thinking about linking to internal partners within the school and district, as well as to our community partners. So if you have thoughts about that, please, as we're going, I'm trying to go fairly quickly, put some things in the chat box. I really like the ideas that I'm seeing around supporting staff as well. When we think about building resilience, there are 6 ways that seem particularly appropriate for both this time now as we're wrapping up this school year, thinking about staying connected over the summer, and particularly when we think about reentry. So we all know the importance of connection. Damien, you can go to the next slide if you're there. Connection. And I think that connection is going to become even more important, and in part because this is the area that we're all suffering around because of the limits to our abilities to connect to others. And I think we've all discovered that virtual connection is important and helpful, but it is absolutely no substitute for in-person connection on so many levels. And so really making those connections, nurturing them. The outreach that you do is critical, as you know. And the one thing that I would say is for even those kids and staff who you do make contact with, but who seem to be struggling, to have that sustained connection. And I think sometimes we think, well, we've made the connection to them, they kind of have to do their part now. But really in this situation, it is about us continuing to reach out. And sometimes that's how you're going to be able to re-engage those kids who seem to be moving farther and farther away. And they really will need some assertive outreach in that way. Some strategies that may be useful is to create buddy systems or mentoring connections, and that can happen virtually. That may be really important for when kids get back to school, especially for kids who are struggling with the adjustment and the transition back to school. Of course, using some of our evidence-based approaches like check-in, check-out, and other things that you already do in school will be very important to utilize when you get back. And it may be that the numbers of kids who are using those things will increase and who need those things. So thinking in advance about how you're going to meet that need could be an important part of that. You guys already mentioned psychological safety, and part of psychological safety, especially for kids, is to normalize the stress response, to help them understand that what they're feeling and how it feels in their body, as well as emotionally, and even what they're thinking, is within the realm of normal, that it does make sense given the conditions that we've been living with, to help them not feel like there's something wrong with them or that they have to push that away or not share it with anybody. Obviously going back to our superpower, looking, asking, and listening. And then to always remember that another element of psychological safety is helping kids feel in control of their emotions. So really working with them, whether it's through SEL content lessons or just modeling over and over, and modeling for your colleagues to help model for kids. How do we appropriately express our emotions? Every opportunity to connect that to literature, and history and all kinds of content areas is really important to help kids feel that they have some control over that. Nutrition and exercise are obviously very important for well-being, psychological stability and well-being. So I don't think we have to do a lot around that. I will point out that recess and movement breaks are probably going to be even more important when we get back to school. Also, if you're doing virtual NTI, I encourage your teachers to do some movement breaks as part of that. Don't just tell the kids to get up and do something, but actually guide them through it and do it with them. Good thing to do actually when you're doing a teacher meeting as well. We know that one of the ways that kids become resilient is by feeling competent. And teachers know this in the abstract, but they don't always tie it to the psychosocial benefits. They see it as the academic benefits. So one thing is to help teachers see that building competence in all areas and thinking about a really holistic approach to learning and is going to be really, really important and benefit the academic learning that kids are doing. Ways to build competence is also going to be dependent on giving kids a lot of targeted affirmation very frequently, breaking the content down into the smallest possible chunks, especially when we get back to school in the beginning and during this virtual learning, because it's very hard for kids to hang on to a large amount of information virtually. So breaking it down to small pieces, and lots of repetition and patience may be necessary. So setting your staff up for those expectations, but helping them see the benefit to the academic side as well. Empowerment builds resilience, and the easiest way to empower kids is to give them a voice and some choices, but also to be really flexible in how we respond to their input. I love that Dr. Ellis immediately took something from the student advisory group and is putting it into action. So that goes such a long way. And then self-regulation, which is an area that you probably focus on a lot already, and this is going to need to continue to be a very big focus through the summer and when we get back to school. So really promoting SEL and emotional literacy, using mindful focusing and helping other colleagues to use mindfulness. This may be a way that you can be a leader and a champion in your school setting and help teach other people to become more comfortable with it and to find ways to infuse it into classroom settings. We know that small amounts of mindfulness done frequently and as part of the regular routine is really the way to go. And I can't see what the last thing says. I think it says, for some reason, I have something in front of that slide. I'm sorry, what does it say?
Regular breaks.
Oh, regular breaks. Okay, so we've already talked about that. Okay, so we can go on to the next. The C in our ABC is to have a crisis plan, and I just want to encourage you to be a part of that planning that's happening for your schools. They have to have your voice as part of that. And you are the folks who are going to advocate to make sure that SEL is both a part of the process and the content, and that culture and climate are really at the tops of that list, and that you are also promoting the positives and the strengths and what's strong about the community and individual students, as well as paying attention to the gaps and the needs and the things that people are concerned about. And of course, last but not least, also making note and being comfortable to address areas of grief and loss, which may not be an area of comfort for other folks in your system or district. And all of this is that to keep reminding your colleagues that, you know, we can have a great academic plan, but we have to make sure that the students are able and ready to take in those academic lessons and to be able to learn, and that staff are feeling ready to do the teaching. And that is all going to come from the psychosocial support that they get that's a part of the crisis plan. There's another document. I don't think you mentioned this, Damien, but there's another.
I can go ahead. Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Miriam. We unfortunately have had several losses of students or staff members during this time. And for that reason, we have a guidance document for counselors, for other individuals working on mental health with students and staff. It addresses how to do a crisis response virtually. So I'm going to navigate some different pages and show you exactly where that is, but I'll also be sending you this PowerPoint, and it's linked up here on this as well. All right.
And we just wanted to remind you all that this came up in the what's it going to take to get from a 6 to an 8 or a 7 to a 9 or whatever, that this idea of, you know, self-compassion is really important. So we want to be compassionate to others, but we also really want to model that self-compassion. So important for us to do it for ourselves, and really important for us to show kids how to do it. And as they transition back into school, we want to set realistic expectations, but we also want to let them know that we don't expect everything to go perfectly and to go smoothly, and that we're a team in figuring out how to make this all work. And so remembering that their behavior is their communication. It's telling us what's going on, and that we're always going to use our trauma lens and ask what's happened and also what's strong, and not just be looking at what's wrong at these times.
So if you could, and we're done with our piece, our presentation, but how are you making sure your students remember their character strengths? How are you reminding them that they are strong? I think that's really, really important. So go ahead and put that in the chat box, please. Just so you know, while you do that, you can reach any of us at the following links. And again, you'll have this PowerPoint. We're really, really lucky to have Miriam. She splits time with us and the Department of Behavioral Health. Hopefully I got that right, Miriam. And intellectual disability, it's a very long name, but we're very lucky to have her. So I appreciate your time today, Miriam. I want to just go over a few other things with you. We do have quite a few resources for school counselors. If you can just make sure, if somebody can let me know, I'm going to try and share this real quick. Yeah, if you can if somebody can use your audio and let me know that you can see this webpage.
Yes, we can see it. I can.
Perfect. All right, awesome. Okay, so this is our COVID-19 resources for comprehensive school counseling. Of course, the first thing that we address here is considerations for mental health and wellness. The guidance document that I told you about, the guidance for schools and districts on virtual response to loss and bereavement, that can be used here. Not only do we give you kind of a playbook for how to use that, how to create a crisis response team virtually, but we even created some templates that you can send to your families and parents when something does happen. Like I said, we unfortunately have lost some students and staff members. We're very concerned about suicide, and in 1 week we lost 2 teenagers and 1 10-year-old to suicide. We've had other losses throughout our state for various reasons, but that continues to be a big ticket item. And of course, we anticipate seeing losses within the school or school community due to the pandemic as well. So please utilize that document. We know that this is a really cool time for you guys to just learn and grow, which is one reason that that we really appreciate your time today. But we've put some different ELA opportunities on here. So I conducted a few different webinars, virtual school counseling during emergency school shutdowns. There's a part 1 and part 2. We have one on creating and videoing school counseling curriculum lessons. We have one on advice for elementary school counselors. So these are our elementary school resources. This advice video, these bullying and resilience lessons. I'm really excited to share with you that that I just completed a video with 2 counselors, 2 middle school counselors. One is from Northern Kentucky, and we have one from Western Kentucky, and they give so many just nuggets of good advice that I'm really excited to get that out. So that video project has just been completed, and that'll go out with the next counselor connection that should go out tomorrow or the next day. We've got social and emotional learning resources that you can use. I do want to bring your attention to this SCL kernels of practice. I think that so many of us and so many different educators, we strive to be perfect, and we just have to accept that sometimes things aren't going to be perfect and they're going to be a little bit messy, and this justifies that. This research suggests that we don't have to have a single curriculum. Like, we don't have to have Y-Try or Second Steps or what's the other one, Sanford Harmony or something like that, that we follow every single day at the exact same time in the exact same place. But instead, this research suggests that if we pick up little tidbits of social and emotional learning and offer that to our students, then they're going to continue to learn and grow in that realm. So that's going to be something really important. All kinds of resources here. The ILP playbook is actually material that we've created, and you can actually create school counseling curriculum lessons based on the lessons throughout those documents. We've got self-care resources for parents, for educators, etc. And then so I've talked about elementary resources, middle school resources. We've also got high school resources here. So this page will go all the way through. Hopefully you can see NTI program guidance documents at the top. I'm trying to go really fast. But we've got just different information on considerations for high school right now. So that's there as well. All right, I'm going to shift here to, you should now see our resources for school counselors during the pandemic on the PowerPoint. All right, so one thing that we are also working on, as you know, I went around the state and really talked up the standards of practice for school counselors. Well, we've had some issues getting that into law. So I was just on a call this week with Dr. Ellis and our policy advisor, Mickey Ray, who are both blessings to me and to school counselors throughout our state. And we decided that just to get this information in your hands, we're going to rename it Framework of Practice for Kentucky School Counselors. This framework will really be much more of a recommendation, and we'll get that online. We'll continue. I've talked to your superintendents and principals about this as well, so we'll continue to discuss this with them. But this is really what should guide our practice as counselors. One thing that I'm continuing to need help on, so if anybody has any ideas or suggestions, need to create a guidance document on tier 1, 2, and 3, how school counselors respond with tier 1, 2, and 3 practices during the pandemic. Are there additional resources that you need from KDE during this time? What are you working on, and then what else is needed? So go ahead and put that in the chat box, please. And I hear little chats coming in, so I'm going to check those real quick. Okay. Awesome, Judy. Hodgepodge. Students definitely need our continued presence. Yes. Okay, so go ahead and put that in. What else can we be doing at KDE for you right now? And then I want to just talk with you. I want to meet much more often next year. I told you that this year was kind of our pause. We hit the pause button with losing a commissioner, having an interim commissioner who is incredible, by the way, and then we anticipate getting a new commissioner most likely this summer. So I would like to meet every couple of months. Does that work for you? Does that sound good to you? Is 1 o'clock a good time? Of course, we anticipate you being back in your buildings, but what is the best day? What is the best time for you? And then if you can also put in your chat box, what future agenda items might you want to discuss? One thing that I'm continuing to struggle with is really getting people to use the language, right? I think it's really important for us to be aligned, and our folks really need to be using the language of school counselor versus guidance counselor. That's an outdated term, and we do much more than just guide students to a vocation or to a college. So I could use help and advice for how to continue to send that message and for other counselors to hear that message. But in the chat box, how often do you want to meet? What time works best? What day works best? I was kind of thinking Thursdays at 1 p.m., but would certainly appreciate any advice you have on that. Right. And we'll open your audio. What questions do you have? What further discussion might you want to have at this time? So go ahead, and if you have something that you'd like to say, I would invite you to open up your audio and go ahead and speak.
Hey, Damien, it's Kyle Thomas.
Hello, future president.
Hey, so something we've really started talking about at our school is supporting our at-risk students, especially through the summer when, normally when we would be planning for next year and kind of letting them do their summer things. We're actually talking about the three of us. We have 3 counselors in our middle school of really ramping it up and making sure we're staying connected through the summer. And that's something that we have started planning that we don't really have anything finalized yet. But once our students are finished next Tuesday, we're really going to be planning what that summer looks like and how to connect and stay connected with them so that they're not missing out, especially with all of these opportunities that they would normally have during the summer, like summer camps and things like that aren't going to happen. Just making sure that we are staying connected and they're staying emotionally healthy.
Yeah, I think one of my concerns, Kyle, I appreciate you bringing that up. I think those are very valid points. But one of my concerns is, how do we do all of those things and ask our school counselors to do this while they're battling compassion fatigue and just fatigue on their own, and many of them need a break. So we'd be happy to continue this conversation. But I honor what you're saying, and I completely hear you. Sharon, I hear that you would like a session on self-care. Well, good news. Miriam and I are working on a video for self-care for professionals that work with youth. So that is coming. What else? Okay.
Damien, can I just say something real quick?
Please.
This is Miriam. I just want to remind folks that telehealth is available for all behavioral health services. So it's available for therapy, for medication checks, and for case management. That's an expansion of previously available telehealth services. There should be no reason why providers in your community are not utilizing telehealth. Medicaid, the MCOs, and all the insurance companies have worked out the billing and HIPAA for that. So what I would say to you is that when you're thinking about your at-risk kids, if they are connected to behavioral health services, if that's either been through school-based behavioral health providers who are employed by the district or by community partners, if it's by community partners, there should be no reason why those services can't continue over the summer. If it's with your school-based, your school-employed folks, it will depend on the contract. They probably don't have a summer contract, so you may need to do some figuring out with that, and maybe they need to transfer to the community partners for the summer. But just to know that those services are available, and you just have to work with the agency to figure out what's the requirement for a device, how do they do it, but there are ways to make it work for everybody. The one thing that can't happen in terms of telehealth is group counseling sessions. So kids who were in groups will need to be moved to individual treatments, but that should be able to happen.
Awesome.
And the reason they can't do group is because of confidentiality.
Sure.
In the other homes. Yeah.
Sure. So Miriam's been super instrumental in communicating that and making sure that our kids have what we need. So much so that we were able to really help an entire region with this issue. So I'm super thankful for that. All right, guys, I don't want to keep you longer. I did put the link into the chat box for an exit slip. We really, really appreciate any feedback that you can offer. Let me know first off if you can access it, if you have an issue with that. And secondly, I just want to finish up with thanking all of the presenters today. Thank you for spending time with school counselors today. They greatly appreciate it. I greatly appreciate it. And then school counselors, I just want to thank you for all of your time and effort. And I know it sounds cheesy because we always say, you know, thank you for everything that you do, but there's no way I can say thank you for all of the ARC meetings that you do virtually. Thank you for all of the individual counseling you do, or the group counseling, or the school counseling curriculum lessons. I mean, the list just goes on and on. So we know that you've got millions of things that you're doing. We appreciate that you're continuing to check in on kids. Remember to check in with your tier 3 kids first. Go down to tier 2 and tier 1. Make sure that everybody has what they need, and you know, continue to seek help if there's any support that I can provide. I appreciate you. You guys have a great day. Thank you so much.